My name is Chloe. I am 27 years old, and 3 months ago, I was planning what I thought would be the happiest day of my life. After 4 years with Jackson, I believed I knew everything about the man I was going to marry. But one ordinary morning, an accidental voice memo changed everything. What I heard in those 2 minutes and 48 seconds made my entire world collapse. If you are curious about how a single voice message destroyed my perfect wedding plans, stick around. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from. In the comments, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that might save your heart one day. I met Jackson at my college friend Tara's housewarming party 5 years ago. I almost didn't go that night. Work had been exhausting and all I wanted was to curl up with a book and a glass of wine. But Tara insisted, saying she had invited interesting people I should meet. Little did I know that one of those interesting people would become my fiancé. When I arrived at the party, Jackson was in the kitchen helping Tara mix drinks. He looked up when I walked in, and I still remember how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. He was tall with dark hair that always looked slightly messy in a charming way, and he had this deep, warm laugh that made everyone around him smile. "You must be Chloe," he said, handing me a perfectly mixed gin and tonic. "Tara has told me all about you." We spent the entire night talking in Tara's small balcony, ignoring the party inside. He was different from other guys I had dated. He asked questions and actually listened to my answers. He was passionate about his job as an architect, his eyes lighting up when he talked about designing spaces that could change how people felt. By the end of the night, I had given him my number, and he texted me the very next morning to ask me out for coffee. Our early dating days were filled with thoughtful gestures that made me feel special. He would send me good morning texts with quotes from books I had mentioned I loved. On our third date, he took me to a small art gallery opening because I had mentioned I studied art history in college. For my birthday, instead of expensive jewelry, he gave me a handmade sketchbook with a note saying he wanted to see the world through my eyes. Before Jackson, my dating life had been a disaster. My last serious relationship had ended when I discovered my boyfriend was cheating with a coworker. The one before that fizzled out when he decided he wasn't ready for commitment after 2 years together. I had almost given up on finding someone who could be both passionate and trustworthy. Jackson restored my faith in love. We complemented each other perfectly. I was organised and detail-oriented, planning our weekends and keeping our social calendar in order. Jackson brought spontaneity into my life, sometimes surprising me with impromptu road trips or picnics in unexpected places. My structured world softened around his creativity, and his somewhat chaotic tendencies found balance in my organisation. After 2 years of dating, moving in together seemed like the natural next step. We found a bright apartment with large windows and a small balcony where I could grow herbs. Combining our lives was surprisingly easy. We painted the walls together, argued good-naturedly about his collection of architectural models, and compromised on furniture. Our home became a reflection of us organised, but with unexpected touches of whimsy. There were countless moments that made me believe we were soulmates. The time I got food poisoning and he stayed up all night bringing me water and gently rubbing my back. The way he remembered every anniversary, not just of our first date, but of small milestones like the first time we said, "I love you, love." The Saturday mornings when we would stay in bed late planning our future and dreaming about the places we would travel together. Our friends and family adored Jackson too. My mother called him the son she never had, and my father, who was suspicious of every man I dated, gave Jackson his approval after their first fishing trip together. My best friend Amanda was the only exception. She was initially skeptical, saying he seemed too perfect and warning me to go slow, but even she was won over eventually, especially after Jackson helped her move apartments and then fixed her leaking sink without being asked. 6 months ago, Jackson proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. We were walking along the beach at sunset when he suddenly stopped, took my hands, and told me I had changed his life. He said he couldn't imagine a future without me in it. When he got down on one knee and pulled out a vintage-style emerald ring that he knew I would prefer over a traditional diamond, I couldn't say yes fast enough. That night, as we celebrated with champagne in our hotel room, I truly believed I was the luckiest woman alive. Wedding planning began immediately. We set a date for June 15th, booked a beautiful venue with gardens for the ceremony, and started the endless list of decisions that come with planning a wedding. I created spreadsheets and mood boards, and Jackson nodded approvingly at most of my choices. We decided on a guest list of 150 people, a mix of family and close friends. Everything was falling into place. Looking back, there was one small red flag I chose to ignore. Sometimes when Jackson was on the phone with his family, particularly his sister Lauren, he would step outside or lower his voice. If I walked into the room, he would quickly end the call or change the subject. At the time, I told myself he was just giving them privacy, or perhaps planning a surprise for me. I never imagined those secretive conversations would foreshadow the destruction of our relationship. The excitement of being engaged quickly gave way to the stress of planning our perfect wedding. I had dreamed of this day since I was a little girl, collecting magazine cutouts and later Pinterest boards full of ideas. Now it was finally happening, and I wanted everything to be just right. The venue, the flowers, the dress, the food, the music, every detail mattered to me. I found myself handling most of the planning while still working full-time as a marketing executive. My days became a blur of emails to vendors between client meetings and late nights researching wedding photographers and DJs. Jackson helped when asked, but the bulk of the work fell to me. At the time, I didn't mind. I told myself it was normal for the bride to take the lead, and besides, I was the organised one in our relationship. Jackson's family dynamics added another layer of complexity to our wedding planning. His mother Grace was a formidable woman who had very specific ideas about how her only son's wedding should be. She had raised Jackson and his sister Lauren as a single mother after their father left when they were young, and she was fiercely protective of both her children. From our first meeting about wedding plans, Grace made it clear she had expectations. She wanted a traditional church ceremony, though neither Jackson nor I were particularly religious. She had a list of family friends who must be invited, adding 30 names to our already crowded guest list. She questioned my choice of colours, saying that sage green was too trendy and would look dated in photos. Lauren Jackson's sister was much easier to deal with. 2 years younger than Jackson, she had his same warm smile and easy laugh. She seemed genuinely happy about our engagement and offered to help however she could. Jackson and Lauren had always been close, talking or texting almost daily. She was his confidant and often the mediator between him and their mother. As the wedding date grew closer, I noticed Jackson spending more and more time on calls with Lauren. Sometimes he would step onto our balcony or into another room, his voice too low for me to hear. When I asked about these conversations, he would say vaguely that Lauren was having some issues or that they were discussing a surprise for our wedding. I wanted to believe him, but something felt off. The tension between me and Grace escalated when she insisted on inviting her entire church choir to the reception. This would add 20 more people to our guest list and push us well over our budget. When I tried to explain this to her gently, she accused me of not valuing family and tradition. Jackson has always appreciated the importance of family, she said pointedly. I hope marriage won't change that. That night, Jackson and I had our first real argument about the wedding. In our kitchen, surrounded by sample invitations and seating charts, I expressed my frustration with his mother's demands. Your mum is trying to take over our wedding, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. We need to set some boundaries. Jackson's reaction surprised me. Instead of supporting me, he became defensive. She's just excited, he said, not meeting my eyes. And she has a point about the choir. They're like family to her. But they're not family to us, I insisted. And we're already over budget. Can't you see how unreasonable this is? Maybe you're being too rigid, he said, his voice hardening. Not everything has to be exactly as you planned it. His words stung. I wasn't being rigid. I was trying to maintain some control over our special day, while accommodating as many of his family's wishes as possible. For the first time, I felt like we weren't on the same team. After that fight, Jackson became even more distant. He started working late more often, and when he was home, he seemed distracted. Whenever I mentioned wedding plans, he would nod absently or find a reason to step away. The enthusiastic partner who had once helped me choose between band and DJ was now barely engaged in any decisions. Most concerning was his strange behaviour whenever I brought up his family. He would change the subject, check his phone, or suddenly remember an email he had to send. It was as if an invisible wall had gone up between us around certain topics, and I couldn't figure out why. As wedding stress mounted, I felt increasingly isolated. My friends were supportive, but couldn't understand why my seemingly perfect fiancé was suddenly so disengaged. My parents lived in another state, and were focused on their travel arrangements for the wedding. I was drowning in details and decisions while feeling more and more alone. One night, about 3 months before the wedding, I tried again to discuss my concerns with Jackson. We were sitting on our couch, the TV on, but neither of us watching it. I feel like something's wrong, I said carefully. You seem distant lately. Is everything okay? Jackson sighed and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. Everything's fine, he said, not looking at me. Just stressed about work and the wedding. It feels like more than that, I pressed. You can talk to me if something's bothering you. He turned to me then with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's just wedding jitters, Chloe. Everybody gets them. Don't overthink it. He kissed my forehead and got up to get a beer from the fridge, effectively ending the conversation. I sat there, a knot forming in my stomach. Wedding jitters were normal, yes, but this felt different. Something was wrong, and Jackson wasn't being honest with me about what it was. That night, as he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was being paranoid. Was I creating problems where there were none? Was the stress of wedding planning making me imagine issues in our relationship, or was my instinct trying to warn me that something was seriously wrong? Little did I know I would soon have my answer, and it would be far more painful than anything I had imagined. It was a Tuesday morning, nothing special about it. I remember because I had an important client meeting later that day and had laid out my navy blue suit the night before. The sun was streaming through our kitchen window as I made coffee, my mind already running through my presentation points. Jackson was rushing around late for a meeting with a new client. His hair was still damp from the shower, his tie slightly crooked as he gathered his things. "Have you seen my portfolio?" he asked, checking under magazines on the coffee table. "In the office on your desk," I replied automatically. I knew his habits better than he did sometimes. "Thanks, babe," he said, rushing to grab it. "You're a lifesaver." He gave me a quick kiss, grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and headed for the door. "I might be late tonight. Don't wait up for dinner." "Good luck with your meeting," I called after him. It wasn't until about 10 minutes after he left that I heard the notification sound from his phone. He had left it on the kitchen counter in his rush, something he rarely did. Jackson was usually attached to his phone, another small quirk that had occasionally made me wonder, but never enough to question him directly. I glanced at the screen and saw the notification voice memo sent to Lauren. My first thought was that Jackson had accidentally recorded something and sent it to his sister. It had happened before pocket dials, and accidental texts were not uncommon. I picked up his phone thinking I should let him know so he wouldn't be confused when Lauren mentioned it. That's when I hesitated. I had never gone through Jackson's phone before. We trusted each other, or so I thought, but something about the recent distance between us, the secretive calls, the disengagement from our wedding plans, all of it made my finger hover over the notification. It's just to see if he needs to know about an accidental message, I justified to myself as I opened it. The voice memo was 2 minutes and 48 seconds long. I hit play and heard Jackson's voice clear and deliberate. This was no accidental recording. He was speaking directly to Lauren. "Hey, Law, thanks for calling earlier. Sorry I couldn't talk more." Chloe was in the next room. "Look, I need your advice on something, and you have to promise not to tell Mum, because she'll just make it worse." There was a pause and I could hear traffic in the background. He must have recorded this on his way to work. "I'm having serious doubts about the wedding. It's not just cold feet, it's more than that. Chloe's become so controlling with all this wedding planning. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be her way. It's like I don't even recognize her sometimes." My hand started shaking, but I couldn't stop listening. "And the thing is, I ran into Natalie last week. You remember my ex from college? We got coffee, and it was so easy, so natural. None of this pressure, none of these expectations. It made me wonder if I'm making a mistake with Chloe. I mean, I care about her, you know I do, but I don't know if she's the one. What if I'm just going through with this because everyone expects it, because it's been 4 years, and that's what you're supposed to do next?" Tears were streaming down my face now, but Jackson's voice continued unaware of how each word was shattering my heart. "And don't get me started on how she's handling things with Mum. I know Mum can be difficult, but Chloe doesn't even try to understand where she's coming from. It's always about what Chloe wants for our day." He sighed heavily. "I don't know what to do, Law. The wedding's in 3 months. All these deposits have been paid. Everyone's making travel arrangements. How do you tell someone you're not sure you want to marry them anymore? How do you say you might still have feelings for your ex? I feel trapped, and I hate myself for it. Call me back when you can talk privately. Love you." The memo ended, and I stood frozen in our sunny kitchen, his phone still in my hand. The world had shifted on its axis. Everything I thought I knew suddenly called into question. Jackson, my Jackson, was having doubts. Jackson was meeting his ex-girlfriend behind my back. Jackson was complaining about me to his sister instead of talking to me directly. I felt physically ill, like I might throw up right there on our kitchen floor. My chest was tight, my breathing shallow. I put his phone down and gripped the counter, trying to steady myself. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. But there was no misinterpreting what I had heard. The man I was supposed to marry in 3 months was questioning everything about our relationship, and he hadn't said a word to me about it. Instead, he was confiding in his sister and meeting with an ex-girlfriend. Somehow, I made it through my workday. I presented to clients with a smile plastered on my face, while inside I was screaming. I nodded at appropriate times in meetings while my mind replayed Jackson's words over and over. I answered emails on autopilot all the while, wondering how I could have been so blind, so wrong about the person I thought I knew better than anyone. By the time evening came, I had cycled through shock disbelief and heartbreak, finally settling into a cold, hard anger. I deserved better than this. I deserved honesty at the very least, and I was going to confront Jackson about what I had heard, no matter how painful the conversation might be. I waited for Jackson in our living room, his phone placed deliberately on the coffee table between us. I had rehearsed what I would say, how I would remain calm and dignified, but when I heard his key in the lock, all my careful planning evaporated. My heart raced as he walked in his face, lighting up with a smile when he saw me, a smile that now seemed like the cruelest lie. Hey, you waited up, he said, putting down his bag. How was your day? You left your phone here this morning, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Oh, thanks. I had to borrow Mark's to make calls today. Was wondering where I left it. He reached for the phone, but I spoke before he could pick it up. You sent a voice memo to Lauren. His hand froze mid-air, confusion crossing his face. Must have been an accident. It wasn't an accident, Jackson. I listened to it. The colour drained from his face as realisation dawned. You went through my phone. His voice hardened, taking on an accusatory tone that caught me off guard. The notification was right there. I thought it might have been an accident, but clearly it wasn't. I tried to keep my voice level, fighting back tears. You told Lauren you're having doubts about marrying me. You said you still have feelings for Natalie, who apparently you've been meeting behind my back. Jackson ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing but now seemed calculated. You had no right to listen to a private conversation between me and my sister. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what you're concerned about, my invasion of your privacy, not the fact that you've been lying to me for who knows how long. I wasn't lying, he said defensively. I was just venting. Everyone has doubts sometimes, Chloe. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything, I echoed in disbelief. You told your sister you're not sure if I'm the one. You said you still have feelings for your ex. How is that nothing? Jackson sat down heavily on the couch, maintaining distance between us. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. With work, with the wedding, with my mum having all these expectations. And instead of talking to me about it, your partner, the person you're supposed to marry, you go behind my back to your sister and your ex-girlfriend. My voice broke on the last words. It wasn't like that with Natalie, he insisted. We just ran into each other and got coffee. It was completely innocent. And you just happened to not mention it to me, I challenged. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. He threw his hands up. You're making this into something it's not. I heard your own words, Jackson. You said you might be making a mistake with me. That's not nothing, and it's not just venting. He stood up, pacing now. Everyone gets cold feet before a wedding. It's normal. I was just working through some stuff with Lauren. She helps me think things through. While I'm left in the dark planning a wedding you're not even sure you want. The anger was taking over now, pushing through the hurt. Of course I want to marry you, he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. I was just having a moment of doubt. It doesn't mean anything. Stop saying that. I stood up too, my whole body shaking. It means everything, Jackson. It means you've been lying to me. It means you've been sharing your doubts with everyone except me. It means you don't respect me enough to be honest with me. You're blowing this way out of proportion, he said, his voice rising to match mine. It was one conversation, one moment of weakness, and you're ready to throw away 4 years because of it. I'm not throwing away anything, I said, tears finally spilling over. You did that the moment you decided to keep secrets and lie to my face every day. We went back and forth like this, our voices escalating, accusations flying. He kept trying to minimize what he had done to make me feel irrational for being upset. The more he denied and deflected, the more I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Was I overreacting? Was this normal pre-wedding jitters that I was blowing out of proportion? No, I decided firmly. This wasn't normal. Secret meetings with an ex confessing doubts to his sister instead of to me complaining about my controlling nature, when all I was trying to do was plan the wedding he had proposed, for none of this was normal or acceptable. After an hour of circular arguments that resolved nothing, Jackson grabbed his jacket. I need to clear my head. This conversation isn't going anywhere. Running away won't solve anything, I said quietly. I'm not running away, he snapped. I'm taking space so we don't say things we'll regret. With that, he walked out, leaving me standing alone in the apartment we shared, surrounded by wedding planning materials that now seemed like mockeries of a future that might not happen. As soon as the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the couch, and finally let myself sob freely. Everything I thought I knew about our relationship was being called into question. Had I misread everything? Had I been forcing Jackson into a commitment he wasn't ready for? Or had he been deceiving me all along? With shaking hands, I called the one person I knew would come without question. Amanda answered on the second ring. "Chloe, everything okay?" "No," I managed through tears. "Everything is falling apart. Can you come over?" "I'll be there in 20 minutes with wine," she said, without hesitation. True to her word, Amanda arrived with a bottle of my favourite red and a fierce loyalty that I desperately needed. As I poured out the whole story, she listened without interrupting her expression, growing darker with each detail I shared. "That manipulative jerk," she said when I finished. "He's trying to gaslight you, Chloe. You have every right to be upset." "But what if he's right? What if I am overreacting to normal pre-wedding fears?" Amanda took my hands in hers. "Listen to me. There is nothing normal about what he did. Keeping secrets, meeting an ex behind your back, complaining about you to his family instead of talking to you directly, these aren't signs of a healthy relationship." She poured us both more wine. "And the fact that his first reaction was to blame you for invading his privacy instead of apologizing for hurting you, that's a major red flag." As the night wore on and Jackson didn't return, Amanda helped me process what had happened and what might come next. She suggested I take some time apart from Jackson to think clearly away from his influence. She offered her spare room for as long as I needed it. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you," she promised, as she hugged me goodbye around midnight. "But please don't let him make you doubt yourself. You deserve someone who is 100% sure about you, who doesn't keep secrets, and who faces problems with you instead of running from them." After she left, I sat alone in our dark apartment, Amanda's words mixing with Jackson's voice memo in my head. One thing was becoming clear through the fog of confusion and pain. Whether our relationship could be saved or not, things could never go back to how they were before. That voice memo had changed everything, and there was no unhearing it. After a sleepless night spent alternating between tears and anger, I made a decision. If Jackson wasn't going to be honest with me, I would find the truth myself. It wasn't something I had ever imagined doing, violating someone's privacy so deliberately, but I felt I had no choice. This was my future at stake, and I deserved to know what I was really dealing with. Jackson hadn't come home all night, not even a text to say where he was. His continued absence only strengthened my resolve. I opened our shared laptop, the one we used for household bills and occasionally for streaming movies. Jackson sometimes used it for work when his was being updated, and I knew he stayed logged into his accounts for convenience. My hands trembled slightly as I opened his email. Was I becoming the very thing he had accused me of invading his privacy? Perhaps, but the alternative was making life-altering decisions in the dark. I needed to know if what I had heard in the voice memo was an isolated incident or part of a pattern. It didn't take long to find evidence that my fears were well-founded. In his sent folder were dozens of emails to his sister Lauren spanning back months. I opened the most recent ones first. "Lauren, thanks for listening yesterday. I know you think I should just talk to Chloe directly, but you know how she gets when she's stressed about the wedding. Everything has to be perfect. And I'm afraid bringing up any doubts now will just make things worse. Maybe after the wedding, when things calm down, we can work through some of these issues." I scrolled to another. "Met up with Natalie again today for coffee. She's so easy to talk to about all this wedding stress. She doesn't judge me for having mixed feelings like Mum would. Chloe would hit the roof if she knew, but it's completely innocent. Just two old friends catching up." Another email revealed he had been meeting Natalie not just once or twice, but regularly over the past 3 months. Coffee dates, lunch meetings, even drinks once after work, all carefully hidden from me under the guise of client meetings or working late. I moved to his social media accounts next. There, in his direct messages, were conversations with Natalie that made my stomach turn. Natalie: So great seeing you today, just like old times. Jackson, always the highlight of my week. Wish we could do it more often. Natalie. How's the wedding planning going? Jackson. Stressful. Sometimes I wonder if we're rushing into things. Natalie. 4 years doesn't seem rushing, but I know what you mean. Big commitment. Jackson. Yeah, sometimes I think about what might have happened if you and I had given it another shot after college. Natalie. Water under the bridge now. But I'm always here if you need to talk. Jackson. That means more than you know. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely click through to the next messages. This wasn't innocent. This wasn't just friends catching up. This was emotional infidelity. At the very least, a door deliberately kept open while he was supposedly committing to me. But there was more. I found a folder in his email labelled Wedding and opened it, expecting to find vendor contracts or guest list drafts. Instead, I found more correspondence with Lauren that painted me in a decidedly negative light. Chloe's on the warpath again about the guest list. Mum wants to invite the Hendersons, and Chloe acted like adding 2 more people would bankrupt us. I wish she could be more flexible. Another fight about the venue today. Chloe insists on the gardens, even though it's way over budget. When I suggested the community centre Mum found, you would have thought I suggested getting married in a dumpster. Don't know how to tell Chloe that her dream wedding is becoming my nightmare. Everything is about appearances with her. Designer dress, fancy centerpieces, photo booth with custom props. Who are we trying to impress? Reading these felt like being stabbed repeatedly. This wasn't the Jackson I knew, the man who had always supported my dreams and seemed to want the same things I did. This was someone who resented me, who talked about me with contempt behind my back, while smiling to my face. And then I found the emails from Jackson's mother, Grace. I had always sensed she didn't fully approve of me, but I had no idea just how actively she was trying to undermine our relationship. Darling, I know you think Chloe is the one, but are you absolutely certain marriage is forever? And I just want you to be sure. Remember how you always said Natalie understood you in a way no one else did? Maybe there's a reason for that. I'm just saying you have options. That Chloe girl is so stubborn about the wedding plans. A mother should have some say in her only son's wedding. I raised you alone, sacrificed everything for you, and now I'm being pushed aside by someone who's only been in your life for 4 years. Think about loyalty, Jackson. I was finding it hard to breathe. It wasn't just Jackson having doubts, it was his whole family conspiring against me, feeding his uncertainties, encouraging him to look elsewhere, and all while I was pouring my heart and soul into planning what I thought would be the happiest day of our lives. The final blow came when I stumbled upon financial documents. Jackson and I had agreed to be transparent about money, especially as we planned for our married life. We had even started a joint account for wedding expenses. But here, hidden in a password-protected folder, the password was his childhood dog's name, which I knew were statements showing significant debt I had known nothing about. Credit card balances in the thousands, a personal loan with a high interest rate, missed payments on his car, and most disturbing of all, several withdrawals from our joint wedding account that hadn't gone to vendors. He had been taking money we had saved together and using it to pay down his personal debt, all while letting me believe we were on track with our budget. By the time I heard Jackson's key in the lock around 8 in the morning, I had been awake all night piecing together a picture of deception that spanned our entire relationship. I closed the laptop and sat very still, my mind made up about what needed to happen next. Jackson looked terrible with dark circles under his eyes, and yesterday's clothes rumpled. He seemed surprised to see me sitting there. Chloe, I've been thinking about everything and I want to apologize for walking out last night. That wasn't fair to you. Where were you? I asked quietly. I stayed at Mark's place, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I needed space to think. Are you sure it wasn't Natalie's place? His head snapped up, eyes widening. What? No, of course not. Why would you even think that? Because I know everything, Jackson. My voice was eerily calm even to my own ears. I know about all your coffee dates and lunches. I know about the emails to Lauren where you complain about me. I know about your mother trying to push you back to your ex. And I know about the money you've been taking from our wedding fund to cover debts you never told me about. His face went from shock to anger to something like defeat in the span of seconds. You went through all my private accounts. That's a complete invasion of privacy, Chloe. Stop it, I said firmly. Just stop. You don't get to make me the villain here. You've been lying to me for months, possibly years. You're the one who betrayed our trust, not me. He sank down onto the couch, his head in his hands. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it, Jackson? Please enlighten me. And finally the dam broke. In a rush of words punctuated by tears, he didn't bother to wipe away. Jackson confessed everything. Yes, he had been meeting Natalie regularly. No, nothing physical had happened, but he admitted he had been emotionally unfaithful. Yes, he was having serious doubts about our wedding, but he had been too afraid to tell me directly. The financial issues were the result of bad investments and living beyond his means to impress me early in our relationship. He had created a lifestyle he couldn't afford, and the debt had snowballed. He had taken money from our wedding account in a panic when a creditor threatened legal action. As for his family, he admitted his mother had never fully accepted me and had been actively encouraging him to reconsider our relationship. Lauren had been more supportive but had still provided an outlet for him to vent his frustrations rather than addressing them with me. I do love you, Chloe, he said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I'm just scared. Marriage is such a huge step, and I don't know if I'm ready. Then why did you propose? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, because it seemed like the right thing to do after 4 years. Because you wanted it so much, because I thought maybe the doubts would go away if I just committed. Each word was another nail in the coffin of our relationship. He hadn't proposed because he couldn't imagine life without me. He had proposed because it was expected, because it was easier than being honest, because he hoped feelings would follow action. I know I messed up, he said, reaching for my hand. But we can fix this. We can postpone the wedding, get counselling work through these issues together. Please, Chloe, don't throw away 4 years over one mistake. But it wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern of deception, of avoiding difficult conversations, of putting everyone else's feelings and opinions above mine. It was a fundamental breach of the trust that should be the foundation of any marriage. I need some time and space to think, I said, standing up. I'm going to stay at Amanda's for a while. Chloe, please, he began, but I cut him off. This isn't a decision I can make right now, Jackson. I need to process everything I've learned about you, about us in the last 24 hours. But right now, I can't even look at you without seeing all the lies. I packed a bag with essentials while he watched silently from the doorway. As I prepared to leave the apartment we had shared and built a life in, I turned to him one last time. Whatever happens with us, whatever I decide, I want you to know that what you did was wrong. Not just the secrets and the lies, but the way you talked about me to others instead of to my face. I deserved better than that, Jackson. I deserved the truth. With those words, I walked out, not knowing if I would ever return as his fiancé, or if the future we had planned together was already part of my past. The world doesn't stop when your heart breaks. The sun still rises, people still rush to work, baristas still make coffee, all while you're trying to breathe through the pain of betrayal. In the days following my discovery, I moved through life like a ghost, going through the motions at work, smiling when required, all while carrying the crushing weight of decisions I never wanted to make. Amanda's spare room became my sanctuary. She gave me space when I needed to cry and company when the silence became too loud with my thoughts. She never pushed me to make a decision about Jackson or the wedding, only reminded me that whatever I chose, it should be for my happiness, not anyone else's. The hardest part was telling people. My parents were the first call, a conversation filled with long pauses and carefully chosen words. "The wedding is on hold," I said, not ready to declare it cancelled entirely. "Jackson and I are working through some issues." My mother, always intuitive, asked if I was okay. I couldn't lie to her, but I also couldn't bear to share the full extent of Jackson's deception. "I will be," was all I could manage. Friends and more distant relatives received text messages or emails with the same vague explanation. I couldn't face the pity in their eyes or their well-meaning but painful questions. The vendors were next, a series of business-like calls to discuss postponement policies and deposit refunds. Each conversation made the situation more real, more final, even as I told myself I was just creating options, not making decisions yet. Jackson called and texted constantly in the first few days. Apologies, promises, pleas for another chance. I responded minimally, reiterating my need for space. After a week, his messages became less frequent, tinged with resignation and occasionally resentment. "I made a mistake, but you're throwing away everything we built," one text read. I didn't bother responding to that one. He wasn't the victim here, no matter how he tried to reframe the narrative. The biggest surprise came 10 days after I had moved out, when I received a text from Lauren Jackson's sister asking to meet for coffee. My first instinct was to refuse. She had been part of the deception, a willing ear for Jackson's complaints about me. But curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet her at a cafe far from my office, and our apartment somewhere I was unlikely to run into anyone I knew. Lauren looked nervous when I arrived, fidgeting with her cup and avoiding my eyes initially. "Thanks for coming," she said, as I sat down across from her. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now." "Why did you want to meet?" I asked, skipping the small talk. She took a deep breath. "To apologize. And to tell you some things I think you should know before you make any final decisions about my brother." Over the next hour, Lauren confirmed everything I had discovered and added context I hadn't known. Yes, Jackson had been having doubts for months. Yes, he had been meeting Natalie behind my back. But what I hadn't known was that this wasn't the first time Jackson had done this. He did the same thing with Natalie when they were together in college, Lauren explained. They dated for 2 years, and right before graduation, when things were getting serious, he started pulling away, complaining to me about her even flirting with his high school ex. She looked down at her hands. "It's a pattern with him. When commitment gets real, he panics and starts looking for escape routes. He convinces himself the grass is greener somewhere else, that the person he's with isn't quite right." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, unsure if this information was meant to help me understand Jackson or confirm my worst fears about him. "Because you deserve to know who you're really dealing with," she said simply, "and because I feel partly responsible. I should have pushed him harder to talk to you directly. I should have told him I wouldn't be his sounding board for complaints he was too afraid to share with you." She reached across the table, not quite touching my hand. "I also want you to know that not everything he said about you was negative. He loves you, Chloe, more than he's loved anyone. He's just terrified of forever of being trapped if it turns out to be a mistake." "That's not love," I said quietly. "Love isn't keeping one foot out the door just in case. Love isn't secret meetings with exes and hiding financial problems. Love is showing up, being honest, facing problems together." Lauren nodded sadly. "I know. And I think deep down Jackson knows too. He's just never been brave enough to love that way." As I left that meeting, I felt strangely lighter. The pain was still there, but clarity was emerging through the fog of confusion and hurt. Jackson's issues weren't about me or anything I had done wrong. They were patterns that predated our relationship fears. He had never confronted behaviors he had never outgrown. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing and rediscovering myself. I started seeing a therapist who helped me process the betrayal and examine the relationship with clearer eyes. She pointed out red flags I had missed or dismissed, not to blame me, but to help me understand why this had happened and how I could protect myself in the future. "You didn't cause his deception," she reminded me in one session. "You could have been the perfect partner, and he still would have found reasons to doubt and look elsewhere. That's about his issues, not yours." Those words were a lifeline when I found myself slipping into self-doubt. Had I been too controlling with the wedding planning? Had I somehow driven him away? No, I reminded myself firmly. I had been enthusiastic about our future together, organized about the planning, flexible about many decisions. I hadn't been perfect, but I had been genuine and committed. I deserved that same commitment in return. Jackson continued his campaign to win me back. Flowers delivered to Amanda's apartment, heartfelt emails promising change therapy, complete transparency. He even forwarded me confirmation of an appointment with a financial advisor, proof he was serious about addressing his money problems. 2 weeks after meeting with Lauren, I agreed to see Jackson in person. We met at a neutral location, a park bench, where we had once spent sunny afternoons planning our future. He looked both hopeful and terrified when he saw me approach. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've missed you so much." "I needed to do this in person," I replied, keeping some distance between us on the bench. "I've had a lot of time to think." "Before you say anything," he interrupted, "I want you to know I've ended all contact with Natalie. I've started therapy to understand why I sabotage relationships when they get serious. I've made a full financial disclosure to my financial advisor who's helping me create a debt repayment plan. I've even told my mother she needs to respect my choices and my relationships if she wants to be part of my life." He pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. The same one that had held my engagement ring. "I want to start fresh, Chloe. Completely honest, no secrets, no holding back." I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, the pull of our history together, battling with the clear-eyed understanding of who Jackson really was. The changes he was describing were positive, necessary, even for his own growth. But they were coming too late for us. "I believe you want to change," I said gently, "and I hope you do, for your own sake. But I can't be the person who waits to see if these changes stick. I can't spend our marriage wondering if you're being honest with me, if you're having doubts, you're not sharing, if you're meeting someone behind my back." "I would never cheat on you," he protested. "You already did, Jackson. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity." The secret meetings, the intimate conversations with Natalie, the parts of yourself you shared with her instead of with me, those were all betrayals. I took the engagement ring box from his hand and placed it back in his. "I'm returning this, and with it the future we planned together." Tears filled his eyes. "Chloe, please, I love you. I know I messed up, but people make mistakes. Relationships take work and forgiveness." "This isn't about forgiveness," I said, my own eyes welling up. "I do forgive you, actually. I understand your fears better than you think. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to stay in a relationship that's been fundamentally broken by deception. I deserve someone who's all in, who chooses me every day, without reservations, who faces problems with me instead of hiding them." "I can be that person," he insisted. "Just give me a chance to prove it." I shook my head sadly. "The thing is, you shouldn't have to prove it. It should be who you are. And the fact that you had to lose me to even try to become that person tells me everything I need to know." I stood up, needing to end this conversation before my resolve weakened. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jackson. I hope you learn to be honest with yourself and others. But I need to find someone who already knows how to do that." or who at least is willing to try before it's too late. As I walked away, leaving Jackson on that bench with the returned engagement ring, I felt a strange mixture of heartbreak and relief. The future I had planned was gone, yes, but so was the illusion of a relationship built on shifting sand. I was walking toward uncertainty, but also toward the possibility of something real, something built on honesty from the beginning. That evening, I moved the last of my things out of our apartment, leaving my key on the counter with a note wishing him well. As Amanda helped me carry boxes to her car, she asked if I was okay. Not yet, I admitted. But I will be. For the first time in weeks, I'm sure about that. The first month after ending my engagement was the hardest. There's no guidebook for dismantling the life you thought you would have. No instructions for explaining to distant relatives why they should cancel their flight reservations or what to do with the wedding dress hanging in your closet like a ghost. Depression hit me in waves. Some days I could barely get out of bed, paralyzed by the enormity of starting over at 27. Other days, anger fueled me, keeping me moving forward with a fierce determination to build something better from the ruins of my plans. Amanda was my rock through it all. She never complained about my mood swings or the times she found me crying in the kitchen at 3 a.m. She gave me space when I needed it and dragged me out for walks or coffee when isolation threatened to swallow me whole. You're not alone in this, she reminded me often, and you won't feel this way forever. Support came from unexpected sources. Colleagues brought me lunch when they noticed I wasn't eating. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages of encouragement when they heard through the grapevine about my cancelled wedding. Even Jackson's sister Lauren checked in, occasionally brief texts, to make sure I was okay. The most surprising support came from my father. He had always been a man of few words, more likely to show love through actions than conversations. But one weekend, he flew in specifically to take me to dinner, just the two of us. Over plates of pasta at my favourite Italian restaurant, he shared something I had never known. "Your mother and I almost didn't get married," he said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. 2 months before the wedding, I found out she was still in contact with her college boyfriend. Not anything romantic, just friendship, but she had kept it from me because she thought I would be upset. I stared at him in shock. My parents had been married for 35 years. They were the gold standard of relationships in my mind. We postponed the wedding, he continued. Spent 6 months in counselling, learning how to be honest with each other, even when it was uncomfortable. When we finally did get married, it was with clear eyes and full hearts. He reached across the table to squeeze my hand. What I'm saying is heartbreak isn't the end, but you were right to walk away from someone who wasn't being honest with you. Whether you ever get back together with Jackson or find someone new or decide to be on your own, what matters is that you valued yourself enough to demand truth. Those words became a mantra in the months that followed. I valued myself enough to demand truth. I deserved nothing less than complete honesty and commitment. And walking away from something that fell short of that wasn't failure, it was self-respect. Slowly, I began rebuilding my life. I found my own apartment, a small but sunny 1-bedroom with a balcony where I could have morning coffee. I redecorated as therapy, choosing every piece deliberately, creating a space that reflected only my tastes and preferences. I rediscovered old hobbies I had let slide during my relationship with Jackson. I took a pottery class on Thursday evenings and joined a book club that met monthly at a local bookstore. I reconnected with friends I had neglected saying yes to, invitations I might have declined when my life revolved around wedding planning and Jackson's schedule. The healing wasn't linear. Some days, something as small as seeing a wedding announcement on social media could send me spiraling back into grief for what might have been. But those moments became less frequent, less overwhelming as time passed. 3 months after our breakup, I ran into Jackson and Natalie at a restaurant across town. They were sitting in a corner booth, heads close together, hands entwined on the table. My first instinct was to leave before they saw me, but something made me stand my ground. This was my favourite restaurant, and I had every right to be there with the friends I had come to meet. When Jackson finally noticed me, his face went pale. He said something to Natalie, then made his way over to where I stood waiting for my table. "Chloe, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off with a small smile. "You don't need to explain anything, Jackson. We're not together anymore. You're free to date whoever you want." He looked surprised by my calm response. "I just don't want you to think that this was happening while we were together. Natalie and I only started dating a few weeks ago. Whether that was true or not didn't matter anymore. What mattered was how I felt seeing them together, which was surprisingly nothing. No jealousy, no anger, not even much pain. Just a dull acknowledgement that this person who had once been the centre of my world was now a stranger living a life separate from mine. "I hope you're happy," I said, and meant it. "Everyone deserves to be with someone who chooses them fully." I walked back to my waiting friends, head held high. That night, I realised something important, the first true healing. I was grateful, genuinely grateful, for the voice memo that had revealed Jackson's true feelings. Without it, I might have married a man who wasn't completely committed to me, who kept secrets and nursed doubts in silence. I might have discovered his pattern of deception years later, perhaps with children in the mix, with shared property and more entangled lives. That accidental voice memo had been the most painful gift I had ever received, but a gift nonetheless. It had shown me the truth before I made a lifetime commitment to someone who wasn't ready or able to make the same commitment to me. A year after what should have been our wedding day, I took myself on a trip to the coast, to the same beach where Jackson had proposed. It was a deliberate choice, a reclaiming of a place that held both beautiful and painful memories. As I walked along the shore at sunset, watching the waves crash against the rocks, I reflected on everything that had happened since that fateful morning when I heard the voice memo. I had lost what I thought was my future, yes, but I had gained something more valuable. A deeper understanding of myself, of what I truly needed in a partner, and the strength to walk away when those needs weren't being met. I had learned that love without honesty isn't really love at all, just a beautiful illusion that can't withstand reality. I had also learned to trust my instincts. The small doubts I had pushed aside, the tiny red flags I had ignored, my gut had been trying to tell me something wasn't right all along. I promised myself I would never again silence that inner voice in favour of what I wanted to believe. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I took off my shoes and waded into the cold water. The shock of it made me gasp, then laugh out loud. I was alive, whole and stronger than I had ever been before. I had survived the unravelling of my plans and the breaking of my heart. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, and while I was open to love finding me again someday, I no longer needed it to feel complete. The voice memo that was never meant for me had changed the course of my life, but standing there on that beach with the setting sun warming my face and the cold water swirling around my ankles, I knew without a doubt that it had changed it for the better. Have you ever discovered something about a partner that completely changed your perspective? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember that sometimes the most painful revelations lead us exactly where we need to be. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the strength to choose truth, even when it hurts.